WP Central Podcast 134 for January 5th, 2012. Hey everybody, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Jay Bennett and special guest Rafael Rivera. Although maybe he'll be a regular guest if we can actually all agree upon a schedule someday. How are you guys doing today?
I'm all right. I'm pretty good. I'm quite excited about having a third person around. Rafael, how are you feeling?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Now, this is actually kind of fun. We're on 3 different time zones. I'm Eastern Standard Time, so I'm on the East Coast, New York. Jay, of course, is London. Rafael is out in Arizona. So we're actually spanning 9 hours, I think it is, about difference.
Yeah.
So what I understand we're trying to get on a regular schedule, but also take into account everybody that we all have 3 separate full-time jobs and obviously huge time zone differences. But we're trying our best to come up with something a little bit more regular this
We
time.
think we may have got it, but we don't want to announce it just in case it all goes wrong again.
Right. So, yeah, hopefully, because we've said this many times before. Anyways, we're also going to do a first here, which is odd with 3 people. We're going to try to keep it to an hour, which I think is a sane goal, but with 3 people talk a lot, you know.
This is part of all of our New Year's resolutions, if you like. I sort of had a moment with the podcast. We're going to have a nice structured show. We're going to keep it to an hour, and it's going to be an exciting 3-person debate. That's my resolution for WP Central this year.
Right. So at least in this regard, we may have less topics to cover, so we can cover them a little bit more in depth. But we'll see.
Yeah. And to answer Robert Smiley in the chat room, yes, you have heard all this before, but this time we mean it, honest.
Yeah, sure. Anyways, let's just hop right into it. So, top news: W Central's New Year's resolutions. Is that our resolutions? Is that what you're talking about, Chad?
Well, so basically, there's a lot of site changes coming up. We've already made IE9 compatible. I wanted to make a sort of point of that because I've got it pinned to IE9. I'm liking it. We're making a resolution with the podcast here and are sticking to an hour. And there's generally a lot of exciting things to come from us this year, I think. Well, that's what I wanted to try and put out there.
Yes. We still got a few more changes with the site, which I'm sure, and Raphael is our critic. He'll always point out our little flaws and how we could always be better. That's why
I think I'm going to get kicked out pretty soon.
No, it's fine. It's good to have that because I'm too easygoing on this stuff. But it's definitely good to have a critic around. So it's very good. Let's head to the big news of the store this week. Which happened pretty much yesterday. We first broke the story of build 8107 of Windows Phone coming out. We had a reader send us in a picture of their Lumia 800 that they actually won directly from Nokia, and it was sent to them. And they booted up, and turns out it's running this build of 8107, which was a little strange since it's so far ahead of 7740. And so we ran the story saying, hey, look, Nokia's playing with this. And then when we looked deeper into it, it turns out we found the 900 was running around the same build, and there's a 710 running the same build. So clearly Nokia was playing around with this later version of the operating system, but we had no other details about it. Presumably it supported LTE and all this kind of other stuff. Then, like about 2-3 hours later, Italian site Plafo emailed us and said, hey, look, our LG just got an update, and it got 8107. And then that was the big story, right? So that this new version of the operating system apparently is on the cusp of rolling out. It's not mass rolled out right now, but it is on the verge. And so this has a lot of security fixes. It's no new features, but it does basically fix a lot of bugs and stuff. Raphael, do you want to quickly talk about the changelog here?
So I think amongst the items fixed, the most important is probably the disappearing keyboard issue. I think it had to do with background agents interfering with the on-screen keyboard at times, and it would just completely vanish. That was probably one of the top annoyances since Windows Phone Mango, I believe. That's when that started.
Yeah.
Right. There's some other minor things, including fixing some issues with Gmail synchronization. I'm not sure what that's about. I haven't had any issues, but I've seen some reports of folks getting some errors while opening certain folders or pulling certain things down. I don't know. Have you guys had any Gmail issues?
I honestly can't say I have.
The one Gmail issue I have actually search server. Now, that doesn't say this specifically that it fixes that, but I definitely have trouble searching server all the time. I'm hoping this possibly fixes it. I know, we all know actually that, of course, Gmail uses a form of exchange, but it's their own proprietary thing that they mess around with, which is why, of course, we end up having all these problems with it at some point. And I think that's what this possibly is. So maybe a rare occurrence, but enough that Microsoft felt warranted to to address it.
Right. And it's, you know, which is it's just a valid point for Microsoft. If you're trying to win over people from other systems, particularly Android in this case, you need to have solid Gmail integration. So it's good that they are focusing on other systems apart from just Windows Live.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we don't know the schedule for this. We got a statement from Microsoft saying that it's been submitted to the carriers for approval. And so presumably we're going to be hearing more, hopefully next week at CES. We're meeting with Joe Belfiore and Microsoft, so we'll be able to actually ask them directly. But we'll actually see if this comes out. Now, the United States, every carrier skipped 7740, which was also a maintenance release. It only addressed 2 issues. And so according to how things are supposed to work, we should be getting this release then, because the carriers are allowed to skip one update but not the next. And so, am I correct in that, Raphael, about how that works?
Yep, that's correct.
So hopefully we'll be hearing more about this update coming out, because it does seem like if I had to choose between 7740 or waiting for this one, obviously this one is definitely the one you don't want to skip. And I think maybe Microsoft said that, like, here, we're putting out 7740, guys, you can skip this one because we have a bigger one coming out. And of course, if you get the new one, you're going to get 7740, which updates beforehand and then goes to this. Now, let's talk briefly about people are forcing their phones to get this update. I actually downloaded the files last night, but I didn't take the plunge. Raphael, you don't recommend doing this, correct?
Right. So on Twitter, I broadcasted out that, you know, it's nice to have something new and shiny. But usually these updates come out in pairs. They're usually paired with either a firmware update or driver updates for the phone. And just applying a generic OS update without the drivers to accompany it is a little scary, especially when it comes to a phone because they're easily brickable. So
I quite agree with you. I made that mistake with my dad's one. I put it up to the HD7 up to Mango, and now it doesn't seem to want to get the driver update, firmware update that lets you do the old tap to focus, and I can't find a way around that without rolling it back. So completely echo you there.
Yeah, and you know the Zune backup functionality is not the greatest, so
all right.
Yeah, I would sit on it unless the keyboard thing's driving you nuts. This doesn't fix the SMS issue that Tom brought up in Win Rumors back then, which is interesting in itself because then that means, there's going to be another update coming sooner or later.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I guess in that sense, they had to. I mean, here's my explanation for all of this. They needed to get this build out with LTE support as well as these bug fixes because Microsoft is on the verge of releasing a major phone next week. And that will segue, I guess, into our CES talk here, which is Nokia's 900, which it does exist. I was on the fence a couple weeks ago about it. I have pretty much confirmation now internally that this phone is real. And I think we've seen now a lot of evidence saying that this device actually is something we'll see on Monday. So Microsoft's getting ready to release this phone, and we know the Lumia 900 runs a version of this operating system, 81.0 something. And presumably this has the LTE support as well as these other fixes. And it kind of makes sense that it would be kind of, I'm just going to say, it'd be kind of crappy if Microsoft put out this phone with Nokia that's going to be huge, and we're expecting a ton of advertising for it, and it's going to have this major keyboard bug and all this kind of stuff. It would just be, it would be kind of annoying. So I clearly think the Windows Phone team decided we're going to lump all these security fixes and things in there and get it out by this date. And clearly the SMS thing was just on the cusp, probably too late to make it into it. Now, luckily, whatever that code is that causes this bug with the SMS to brick the phone and everything is not public. And so right now, and it doesn't look like it's going to go public, which is obviously very good. So it looks like this is something we can sort of wait a little while longer. But we'll have to definitely see what happens.
Yep.
So
yeah, I definitely put disappearing keyboard above that. I mean, having a solid state keyboard, or sorry, solid fixed keyboard, actually almost is like having a new feature for your phone. At this stage, I've got 9 background tasks running, and every time it happens, I just have to sit and wait for the phone to be ready to use. So it's really good news to see it being released as a patch fix rather than waiting for a big update.
And I also think this is another good sign, right? So, of course, Microsoft had issues with the Meadow update, but I always gave them a little wiggle room on that. It was their first time, and they learned clearly a lot from that. I think the update team has done a remarkable job lately. Still could have room for improvement, of course, but this shows that Microsoft, I think, really is serious about keeping these operating systems up to date. And so the Mango update was very successful. And, with 8107 coming out, I think, it's nice to have a maintenance and fix release. The OS isn't going to be perfect. There's going to be little bugs here and there. This is great for them to be introducing it. Hopefully we'll get more information next week, and we'll be seeing this roll out hopefully over the next few weeks and few months on devices across the world. Speaking of CES, so we have the Nokia 900 we're just talking about. It's expected to be shown Monday at CES in Las Vegas. We'll be there, of course. That's going to be at 3 p.m. Out on the Pacific time.
Daniel says we. He means that he'll be there, and some of us will be stuck in rubbish.
Well, the Mobile Nations team will be there. Everybody's going to be there from iMore, which was the iPhone blog, which is renamed Android Central. So all of us were going to be there covering this event. But yes, we actually have very good seats for this show. So you definitely want to check it out. We'll be hopefully front row with it. So it's very cool. But the Nokia 900 is expected to be shown a 4.3-inch device, 1.4 gigahertz CPU, 16 gigs of RAM. Some saying 32 may be also offered. I'm not really sure about that. But this device looks pretty awesome. Front-facing camera. It's basically going to be the Lumia 800, but sort of blown up. So, guys, what do you think of this phone? Jay, we'll go with you at first. What do you think of this Nokia 900? Slightly jealous?
So, no. Well, here's the thing. Okay, so obviously, I bought the Lumia, the 800. I went with it in the end. But I'm looking through what we've got here as the rumored specs, because at the moment we haven't got a confirmed spec sheet. I can honestly say, yes, I am jealous of the fact that you have got the bigger screen, although not as much as I thought I'd be, because I've kind of got used to 3.7 inches now, and my thumb can find its way across the screen quite happily. It hasn't affected me as much as I thought it was going to, coming away from the Omnia 7. Aside from that, what else has really changed? You've got a slightly bigger battery, but you've got a bigger screen, so battery life won't be that different. I can't quite see the difference in terms of how much this phone's going to sport that will be so much better. It would be different if we were bringing along a front-facing. Yeah, well, LTE doesn't exist over here, so that's a bit of a misnomer for me. For America, that's great. What we can't work out just yet is if it's going to have a front-facing camera, which I think that and the gyroscope would be maybe the two differentiating hardware aspects when it comes to the phone. I think Nokia was incredibly wise to stick with the design ethic they've put on the Lumia, because it's still, to this day, every now and again I just pick it up and go, oh, it's so curvy. So I'm so happy that they've gone with that design aspect and just made it bigger and better. And the renders, the mock-ups that we've seen, the images, it all looks quite reasonable. It looks like we can't tell. It looks like there might be a front-facing camera on the top left of this picture that we've got. It looks like it might just be the sensor. But if it's a front-facing camera version of a Lumia with a bigger screen and 16 or 32 gig options like we're hoping, then I'll concede a bit of jealousy. How's that?
Okay, but bigger question, besides your own personal taste, what do you think for the US market, Nokia, and Windows Phone in general? Is this what's needed for them to really break through?
I think you'd agree with me when I say it's the perfect phone for that. And Raphael, I'd be keen to know what you think on that one.
Yeah, and now, Raphael, quickly, you only have still a Samsung Focus, correct? You haven't even jumped into the second-gen devices.
Right. I don't keep up to date with hardware too much. I mean, the Lumia looks nice. That's about it. I'm not a big hardware guy.
It's beautiful. Look at it.
I would prefer just the Samsung Focus, but a little bit newer. So that's where the S would probably come into play. I just need something a little faster so I can play Sally Salon a little faster.
Really need speed for Sally Salon.
Oh, you get that.
And maybe some of those 3D games, to be serious. They're a little slow on the first-gen devices.
Sure.
But LTE doesn't interest me because AT&T can't even get 3G right. So I can't imagine the phone transmitting faster would make things any better on their network. So
I think Daniel will tell you otherwise based on his love of his radar.
Yeah, I know.
No, that's different. That's different. I mean, because radar is T-Mobile, and I'd say T-Mobile's 4G network. It's actually HSPA Plus, is really, really speedy. I would rather this phone have that. Now, this phone is rumored to have some T-Mobile bands on it, maybe Pentaband. We don't really know yet. If that's the case, that could be really awesome, because I'd really kind of like to put this phone on.
T-Mobile's still around, really?
Yeah, T-Mobile. It's sad. They are, obviously a lot smaller. I walked. I did. I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. I did the saddest thing in the world, which is I walked into a T-Mobile store the other day, and it was just
Mm.
like tumbleweeds, and they didn't even want to really help me, which was the weird thing. I figured they'd be excited to see a customer, and they're just like, yeah. But
Like,
yeah. So, but I'm pretty excited about this phone. I think now this is also tied and coupled with this notion that Microsoft and Nokia will be spending upwards of 100 million, possibly 200 million dollars in promoting and advertising this phone. This really looks like AT&T is supposed to going to hero this phone, which means they're going to give it a huge priority and status with their employees, their stores,
Which
and
I can
advertising.
definitely believe as well.
Sure, yeah. I think this is going to be really the beginning of the big push here in the United States. It'll be really big in spring. We're not expecting this phone to actually launch till March, so there is still some time for them to gather. But seeing what they did in Europe so far, I think this is very exciting to see. I
Do you know
really
what,
like this phone.
I was about to ask you this. How do we know it's not? We don't think it's launching till March, because if we think about the Lumia announcement, it rolled out pretty quickly.
Yeah, this is America. Everything goes a little bit slower.
Oh, everything's so big over there.
That is the rumored date, and to be honest, knowing our past history, I put stock in it. Between Nokia does have low production problems. Seems like in ramping this stuff up, we saw the colored versions of the Lumia 800 taking a while to propagate out there. In fact, I don't think the red version's available yet.
Right.
But the cyan took a while. So it looks like they're
It's only a
trying
month.
to, huh?
It took about a month to get the sign out, I think. Or was it
Okay.
3 weeks? Not too
No,
long.
it was definitely it was about 6 weeks, I think. It was definitely a lot longer. But that's what I'm saying. So I think they have to ramp up here a little bit. So I think March is actually a fair date, but we'll find out next week. I'm kind of excited about this phone. I kind of wish it was a little bit on T-Mobile because I do get very good speeds with them. AT&T, I think Raphael's right. Their 3G speeds aren't that awesome, and so
yeah, it's immensely frustrating to be in a store somewhere like full bars, 3G, and you can't even load like Bing.
yeah,
Retarded.
yeah. I mean, it's
Well, feel sorry for
it-
those of us who occasionally see full bars of Edge and can't get anything.
yeah. I would probably have to shoot myself in the head if I had Edge. That is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just. I will say the HSPA Plus is faster. I have my Focus S right here, and so it does gain better speeds than the Focus, but it still could be better. That's for definite.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out
I'm gonna stick by my
question for the chat
BlackBerry
room.
here.
I'm going to show a very quick question for the chat room just to answer while we talk about the next thing. I want to know, would you buy the 900 as it is? And is there anything you'd change about it? So everyone in the chat room just answers on a postcard / your chat entry. Because the Lumia 900 is looking to be the big move into Microsoft. For Nokia rather, not for Microsoft. So that's
Now,
CES.
quickly-
So apart from the Lumia, what else are we expecting
Yeah,
from CES?
I was going to say, so the HTC, no, so this is the other weird story, right? HTC is apparently going to put out a new Titan. Of course, the Titan's only a couple weeks
It's
old.
bigger.
This new Titan's going to be slightly thicker to accommodate a larger battery. Always nice, I suppose, but the Titan's already big enough. But that's mostly to compensate for LTE on board. Now, outside of that, some cosmetic differences. It's basically what we think is going to be the same phone. I'm not that excited about this. I'll be excited about holding it and using it. I don't think I'm going to rush to buy it because, as we mentioned earlier with AT&T's 3G and 4G stuff, they're going to charge more possibly for. I don't know. Do they charge more for LTE? Does anyone know? Raphael would know, maybe.
I know.
I don't
have
think
no
they
idea.
do actually. So, actually, in that regard, it's not that bad. But
Gibby
I say all
Holmes in the
this-
chat room is saying no, they don't.
okay, so that's good.
There's
And
probably a
I
bit
would
of a
say-
savings in using LTE, given it's thinner. Their phones are lighter. I don't know.
Yeah, now this is going to be a second generation LTE chipset, meaning that it's going to be much better on battery life than the first gen stuff. So we already know that Windows Phone gets better battery life than say Android, but in this term it should also do better on LTE with this new second generation Qualcomm LTE modem that may be on board. So, and of course I'm actually lying here. I am going to buy this phone. I buy every freaking phone that comes out. So, but
Can we
I'm
actually?
not-
Can you when you buy this and the Lumia 900? Can you just put up a photo on the site of your phone sort of cabinet?
Yeah,
I want
I
to see
really
them in
do,
some kind of
'cause
display case.
I have 11. I have 11, and then I have I have two 710s on the way. One's our review unit, which they're late getting to us, but we'll have tomorrow. And then I actually bought the 710 because it was such a cheap price. And so that brings me up to 12 phones. So yeah, it looks like I'll be going up to 14, 15 pretty soon.
You don't have a Jill Sander?
You know, I came really close to buying the Jill Sander. It's so cheap right now. I was like, oh man, I really came close to buying it, but I was like, even I have my limits.
Do you have the IS-12, wherever it was, the Fujitsu one they got?
I don't. I've looked into getting the IS-12T. The IS-12T, whatever that is. That's a Fujitsu one. That is super cool. I got to look into how compatible that is on U.S. networks because it's weird. It's a CDMA GSM phone, and you can't use it on Sprint or Verizon, so don't ask. But I have to look into that.
So I'm just going to bring back quickly to our chat room because we've got a lot of responses to the Lumia 900 question. People are saying no, they want the Radiant. Or no, they're happy with our Titan. Yes, if it has front-facing camera, is on Sprint or Verizon. I'd buy it if it was on Verizon. Yes, if it has 32 gigabytes. So it actually looks like there's quite a few conditionals for people going for a Lumia. I can't wait to ask this question again after people have tried it in the store and just held the device and see if they fall in love.
And we have to also understand a lot of the market here is going for people new to smartphones, not a lot of our power users. I know we're not the typical demographic. What else we're expecting? Samsung, possibly. We got to see what's going on with them. They may be showing off some phones, so we have to look into that. There is a phone called the Samsung Monument, which we've seen show up. We have no idea what it is, but it could be this, also an LTE phone. So
George is suggesting the Mendel.
Right, yeah, it's a Mendel. Yeah, there's a couple code names. It's kind of like the Champagne, Ace, Lumia 900. They all have these various code names, so we're not positive on that. LGE should have a couple phones there. It's hard to get excited about LGE. They've really sort of underwhelmed recently, but their stuff is not too bad. I mean, their Quantum is kind of a cool phone, not perfect, but it was kind of a neat device out there. It was definitely unique. So hopefully we'll see something from them. Other than that, though, I think it'll be kind of quiet. Outside a few device announcements, I don't expect too much. I think Microsoft will talk about this new version of the operating system, but they're not going to talk anything about Tango until February at Mobile World Congress, and so we'll have to see about that.
And as you've mentioned, of course, we'll have interviews with, who is it? It's Joe Belfiore and who else? Anyone else?
Well, we'll be meeting with Nokia, of course, HTC, we have a meeting with on Monday, and probably Samsung, and we'll stop by LG's booth and stuff and see what's going on.
So next week's going to be a big week for people who want to keep their eyes trained on the site.
Right.
/ the app. Okay, so that's CES. Obviously, there'll be some form of special podcast after that. Whether or not it'll be a Mobile Nations one or a WP Central one, we don't actually know. We'll figure that out close to the time. So I'm going to move on now as a welcome to Raphael to ask you a question, or rather to tell us the story about the Chevron unlockers tokens and the 10,000.
What the F, man?
Yeah. So to some of the newer listeners, so Chevron WP7 sold out of tokens. And I want to take a moment to explain tokens. Tokens, we call them tokens. They're really just a string of characters we pass down to a user, and they type it into the client, and they unlock their phone. Of course, we can't run out of those. Virtual, they're randomly generated. What we have sold out of are unlock slots. So Chevron WP7 Labs is built on top of an App Hub account. It's really simple. They gave us an account, we registered, and they upped the device limit from 3 or 5, like you normally would get, to 10K. So we built our service on top of that, and once we fill those slots, that's it. We can't give people unlocks. Now, when we sat down with Microsoft back in January planning this all out, we decided, we're not really sure how active the homebrew community is. That is, the people that like to tinker with their phones, run some code on there, not go through the official marketplace. But we weren't sure how active that community was. We were worried that once we released this, that a bunch of pirates would come on board. So we didn't have the data to show how many people are in the homebrew community, how many are just pirates. So we said, okay, let's start off small and incrementally work our way up. So I think we launched with maybe 1,000 tokens. Those disappeared in less than a month. We then upped it again by another 1 or 2K. And we kept going. And then finally we said, okay, just give us everything because we're selling them like hotcakes. And they gave us the 10K. We just sold out
So,
of those at the New Year.
so a question then, Raphael, does that mean that if people want to support the Chevron project and people want to be able to unlock their phones, that the key is for those who already have unlocked it to start getting involved in homebrew and start developing some code and putting some interesting stuff out there? Is that what we're saying?
That's actually a great point. So it would help us in kind of showing Microsoft that how successful we were if people that have unlocked their phones via Chevron to show us kind of what they're working on. It could be a snake app. It could be something that just blinks colors. Just let us know. Email us. Show us the app. Give us a zap if you really want us to show it off. But we can throw this into a PowerPoint. Show it to them in a meeting coming up soon. Yeah, that would be very handy.
If you've got to meet, we'll obviously announce it here, but I think it's something that's worth even posting here within WP Central. People can sort of start showing us some homebrew stuff, especially if you've got a meeting coming up. Because I'm really, as a developer, sort of trying to make money off the apps, I'm really keen on the fact that what Chevron's doing is allowing homebrew, which I've got so much respect for homebrew developers. There's some stuff out there, experimental stuff that gets thrown in that I wouldn't have the imagination to ever do, let alone the talent or whatever else. But as Microsoft clearly identified when they got on this project with you, is piracy is the big issue. And as much as people can say, "Oh, it's my phone, I should be able to do what I want with it," you getting my app for free when I'm trying to just say that give me 79 pence or 99 cents for it is a bit of a big deal. It's a bit of a slap in the face. So
Right.
if we can encourage both, it's fantastic. And I think to see what the homebrew development community have done would just hopefully show Microsoft, hey, this is working.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify there. The meeting that's coming up is nothing special, and we're not trying to sell the idea of resuming the site to Microsoft. This is purely a decision we're trying to make internally, and internally I mean me, Chris Walsh, and Long Zhang, who comprise of this team. But we're still on the fence. Admittedly, supporting this is a huge pain, and by pain I mean phone connectivity to the PC is our number one issue right now. Whenever you're dealing with USB, you start bringing a litany of issues like power, cheap cables, poor contact. It's kind of connected. It can kind of sync, but it doesn't. And it's just a nightmare. We have like at least 5,000 plus emails.
Yeah, admittedly, I think I even see that just from occasionally you have to unplug and replug in just to get Zoom to pick up the connection properly. It thinks it's connected, but it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, Zoom is atrocious.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of a big thing here, I suppose, which is that you guys are filling in a hole that technically Microsoft should do themselves, and so perhaps
that's quite a statement, Daniel.
I think they should. No, I don't see why not. I don't see why they can't do the same thing that the Chevron team is doing, which is go, here's $99 for an App Hub account. You can develop for Windows Phone and publish to the marketplace. You get all the benefits and perks. You get support. You can talk to us. That for $9, you can just unlock your device, sideload apps, but you don't get any support. You don't get any marketplace, submissions. I don't see why that just can't be done. They still make some money. It's limited. It'll be controlled from their ends, and it would help foster, I think, the homebrew community. It would make it a lot easier. Having 3 guys do it, they've done, I think, a remarkable job. But as they said, you get to these issues with USB, and it turns into a full-time job. And now a lot of people are like, oh, but they're bringing in money and stuff. But but there's also stress, frustration, and dealing with everything. It's not just worth it, And so I would hope that eventually Microsoft could just do this themselves. Obviously, they can. And so, I don't know. I think it would be good for the community. This is what people want. And why not do it in a controlled fashion?
Yep. Let's say, we can say Microsoft can do it, but that's going to create a couple of jobs. But the thing that consumers and businesses are all guilty of this. And doing what I do for my day job, it frustrates me every day that people who think support is free. Because support is not free. Support is probably the biggest part of most well used and high running software services. Anything which is going to be utilized repeatedly rather than installed and used a couple times requires some level of support. And we have app support for the app. I can't imagine how much effort in his own time Raphael's had to put in for this. And I spend my days on support, so it's not a free thing, and there has to be something there. And I think for Microsoft to stand that up, perhaps it is better that they leave it to the community. But at the same time, as you say, you can't ask three guys to basically give up their lives just for people who can't get the right USB cable.
Good question in the chat room, I guess. Although, why would anyone use a marketplace if everyone was homebrewing? I don't find that to be a problem. As someone who does homebrew and uses those apps, it's not nearly as convenient as a marketplace. The marketplace, you just go on your phone. I could be anywhere and just download a new app, install it, get an app update like that. Much more convenient. I love when developers send me Zap files. If you ever want me to cover an app and something new, send me the Zap file. There's a good chance I'm going to take a closer look at it. Having said that,
it really does.
I have to go home or get my laptop, bust out a USB cable, which I'm always losing, plug in my phone, sync, drag it over. There's limitations on how many of those files I can have on my phone. Not nearly as convenient to do homebrew as it is the marketplace. And I cannot see most people, or even a huge majority of people doing this, but for that segment, 10 to 20%, I think it drives innovation on the platform. You see a lot of creative uses. I think Microsoft could see how things are done, what people want to do. For instance, like the battery tile or being able to screen capture, all this, and then they can do it themselves. So I really find this aspect of the community drives innovation on the platform. Yep. And so it's not a matter of having the majority of people do it or even, just have that small segment. But doing homebrew, it's awesome, but not nearly as cool as having the marketplace, which is just done so well. So I don't find that really to be a big concern.
So on that topic, what do you think? I'm sorry to cut you off, Jay. But,
no, go for it.
What do you think about homebrew markets? I know there's at least one dev out there that's trying to set up a Cydia-like marketplace for homebrew applications.
Right. Yeah. What I think this is a great idea. We've talked about doing some sort of repository. We're still looking into that. Once again, you could do two routes with this, and Microsoft needs to choose. They could ignore it and let the community do it on their own, and you could get a Cydia. Now, Cydia is very good where it's monitored. They don't put pirated software, and it's actually a pretty successful model. Apple has this love-hate relationship with it, but still it exists, and I think they've done a good job with it. They could go that route, or you can get Installous, right? Installous is the Apple version of a pirated Apple store that has all pirated apps, and that's all it does. And so it'll probably go both ways if you just allow it to go on its own. I'm not sure if Microsoft wants that, but if Microsoft steps in and says, here, we're going to set up a homebrew store, we're going to make things easier, and then but then you have to get into who's going to monitor it and make sure pirated apps don't get involved. So it does get into a technical issue, but
right. And then what about application certification? Like an application might steal your contact data, upload it to Jay's server.
Sure, exactly what I was about to say. We've got to remember that it's not just piracy, and the chat room mostly is saying, we like the idea, but it needs to be monitored, it needs to be looking out for piracy. But actually, there's something inherently fantastic about having controlled marketplaces, considering just how much of your personal data is stored on your smartphone. If that information can be stolen by a homebrew application, depending on the level of access that developer unlocking allows, which it doesn't really allow that much, then that's something which needs to be strongly considered. And that's something else that you'd lose from not having a closed marketplace system.
And then this gets into the problem now that Microsoft will essentially have to have two marketplaces, monitor two things, and now it becomes another whole full project. Yeah. And so there definitely are obstacles.
Yep. I think we've opened a can of worms here, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. There goes our hour.
Yeah, definitely.
So, in the interest of trying to roughly keep us to a timing schedule, I'm going to move us on. We had a little story regarding the market share of Windows Phone, and talking about the fact that we're actually still the market share of Windows Phone still isn't fantastic. I don't want to dwell on this story for too long because actually we've done it to death. What I want to look at is where do we actually see things going this year in 2012? Now I've done my part. My cousin was home for Christmas, and she wanted a new phone, and I said, "Hey, check out this, see if you like it." And she's gone away very happy with the HTC Radar. And my question is this simply: do we think that 2012 will be the year of Windows Phone? And Daniel, I heard you have some interesting comments on this on the Mobile Nations wrap up. You think that this year might be our exploding year?
It's not going to be the year where we get significant market share. It's going to be the year, though, I think people start to really take notice. Now, we've already seen this with the, I think, media, right? So people who do reviews, technical writers, have really come into favor with Windows Phone and being like, hey, this is actually really good. Mango's a great update. Microsoft is this like unsung hero right now with this operating system. And that's the start. Once you get the media on your side, because they definitely did not have the media on the side when Windows Phone launched. Everybody just criticized how it lacked copy and paste and all these basic features. And in fairness, I think some of that was legit, but it is what it was. And so now with Mango going forward, I think with this new update coming out and Tango as it goes further, and especially as they're successfully roll these out in comparison to Android, which is a disaster for Ice Cream Sandwich, which is on like less than 1% of the phones out there right now, even though it was introduced like 4 or 5 months ago. I think it's going to start to really gain attention. Now, the big thing, of course, is going to be Nokia here in the United States. They're literally going to have to wave their hands to get noticed. I think.
But I really want to see some Nokia reps running down sort of somewhere in Times Square going, hey, look, we got a phone.
I mean, well, you see that, right? We ran that story with in India. They're putting it on the planes. All this, so it's about getting into the mindset. So we're not going to get significant market share. It's still going to be slow, but I think it will pick up. I think you're going to start to see people talking about it a lot more. Once you get Skype on board, the Nokia thing, and then I think really later in the year when Windows 8 comes around and we see Windows Phone 8, all of that's going to start to snowball. I still think, I'll revise, I think you won't see market share growth to 2013, but 2012 will be the year that the consumers start to come on board and we start to see it get picked up a lot more and used a lot more. So
interesting. Raphael, do you agree?
I'm not really a forward-looking kind of person based on these predictions. I don't even know how they measure this ComScore mobile lens, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they gather all this data, but it makes sense, especially with Nokia's recent crazy marketing campaigns. Like Dan just mentioned, the painting of the plane. That was a bit of a surprise for me.
But, to put it mildly. But then again, they did turn the entire Millbank Tower into one massive display and put a dead mouse at the bottom of it.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay.
Oh, you should have been there.
Yet?
No, I haven't watched it yet. Dude, I'm behind.
I was there live. Raphael, you need to watch that, man. It was impressive.
You can actually download the HD file for it, which is really cool how Nokia did this. They curated a website where it's just permanently up there with photos. You can download the whole video file in HD, and I threw it on my Xbox and watched it on my big 42-inch TV. And I tell you, it was a heck of an event. It makes me very excited to see what they're going to do here because that's what's needed here in the United States right now. Yeah, we have these little commercials, a full-page ad here and there, but there's no consistent media campaign to get Windows Phone OS and Nokia out there. And that's one thing that we've mentioned before that's good about having Nokia do this. It's not just for their sake, but for the whole operating system. People will take notice. And so I'm very excited to see what they're going to do here. I'm hoping for some really big events come springtime. I'm here right in New York City, so
I'm just going. So I'm going to knock them down slightly because Diswink in the chat room just put a very good point. Why would you paint a plane? Because how often do you see the plane?
Well, actually, no, this is a common practice. It's not that unusual. They have a couple planes that have the Lumia 800. It wasn't this one plane, right? It's like their fleet, basically. We see this all the time here in the United States. If I fly all the time out of JFK Airport. If you go there, you'll always see planes with advertising on it. It's no different than a city bus, what they do. We even posted a picture of Seattle with a bus that had the whole metro thing going with it. And some people are like, oh, this is a poor way of spending money. It doesn't sell the operating system. Like, how are you going to sell an OS on a plane? That's not the point. It's about getting the name Lumia 800, Lumia out there, Nokia out there, and eye-catching. This is how advertising works. Advertising isn't always about selling the whole message at once. You can't possibly do that. But
that's true.
When you start seeing buses all over town showing this Lumia or Nokia or Windows Phone, you start to take notice, and pretty soon it gets into your mind. Advertising is it's studied very well, especially.
Psychological warfare.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cognitive science
That's a very good
behind
way of
this.
putting it, Raphael.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Warfare.
cognitive science behind this and how it works, and so it's subtle, but it builds up. And a lot of people are in our chat room or on the site may say, "Well, it seems stupid to paint a plane," but I'm telling you, this stuff is about getting out there, and so now I think it's going to be good stuff. I'm very excited to see Nokia's advertising power behind this. So.
And I think it's interesting to note that, or important to note, sorry, that the airlines are in pretty poor shape right now. So we're not talking lots of money here to paint a plane. I'm sure these guys welcome every penny that Nokia give them.
Yeah. That's totally true. I mean, I remember years ago, this was going back to 2007, 2008 at Penn Station, right where you wait for the trains. The entire upper section was covered for actually Windows Mobile. They had the, remember the Motorola Q? It was the Motorola Q, and it was like the world's thinnest smartphone and all that kind of stuff. The Q was really kind of a cool phone in hindsight. But, so they do this stuff. And
start reminiscing on us, Dan.
I know. I still have the Q. Let me bust out the Q. I have that somewhere. But
and his kin.
Go to a display case and unlock it carefully. Go past the lasers and the guards.
I never got the Q9H, but the Q9H was a pretty cool phone too. Anyways, but I mean, this stuff is important, so I'm excited about it. But
Dad, I'm going to stop you because you're going off on you're getting very enthusiastic now about old phones, which is not what we do on this podcast.
right. Okay, let's go to software news.
Let's go to software news. So I'm going to introduce a bit of a new feature that I sort of had an idea of playing with this week, and hopefully you guys read my email and have come prepared. Each week, just the three of us are going to quickly point to an app that we've downloaded or perhaps hasn't been featured or is even an old app that we just think is something that you guys might want to check out or give a try. And it's called our app picks this week. So hopefully, rather than going over lots of old software or going over lots of stuff that's been released this week, we might talk about a new bit thing, we might talk about an old thing. So I'm going to go first. And mine is, for those of you living in the UK only, I'm afraid, and it's RAC Traffic, which I have pinned to my screen just here. Now, aside from the fact that it's a little bit ridiculous as to how it handles background tasks, and I'll come to that later in a whole post probably, it's a fantastic little app for checking your traffic news, and it focuses directly, I don't know how you'll be able to see on the video, it focuses directly on roughly where you are, although that is based on an old location of mine, and will tell you based on a map of traffic disruptions around you. You can drop onto the instant list. The guy behind BBC News, Lawrence Scripper, actually did have a fantastic traffic app out a while back, but it's been discontinued as a result, I believe, of not having a source of traffic anymore. So if you're missing a good traffic update app, this one's completely free. There are no ads. It's just RAC basically advertising themselves. For those who don't know, the RAC are a breakdown service here in the UK. So they actually also have a little feature to let you say, hey, I've broken down. Either if you're a member or a non-member, you can request some RAC assistance through the app as well. So great little app, nice little thing to come onto the platform, and it's free at the end of the day. So if you're in the UK and you want a free traffic app, that's my recommendation. Raphael, do you have one for us?
I'll go last.
You'll go last, okay. In which case, Daniel, go ahead.
It is putting people on the spot, but and even for myself, it's tough because I look at so many apps every week. It's a little overwhelming.
Pick a random one.
Well, and this is I mean. And that's kind of the point. Like, every time you see me do a video on an app, it's because I really like it. If you don't see me do a video on a specific app and wondering why, it's because I probably don't like it. And it's really that simple. So a lot of the apps I covered this week, which we'll talk about as we go through, Clout and Ziggy, for instance, I'm really big fans of.
Tell us about Clout if you haven't got another one, because I know Clout's a big one for you.
Well, I'll just quickly I just want to say Mini Squadron is my favorite crack right now. I love Mini Squadron. I think it's one of the most fun arcade games out there. My girlfriend and I play it all the time, and we just crack up. I think it's just one of the, because everything watches like Mini Squadron. I don't know, it's really funny. You have to play it, but it's such a cool game, and I just think it has a lot of character. I love it. So that's my big addiction. Doodle, I think, is a really cool thing that needs a little bit more attention out there. I think it's really innovative. Yeah, so that won the hackathon contest at Nokia World, which we covered. We were there when they won it and stuff, and I took notice. I was like, that's a really cool app, and it's out now. It's there's a free ad-supported version, or it goes for $2.99. I have to admit, it's sort of like Alpha Jacks, where I really want to like it, but I'm so bad at it sometimes. It's like, But
Is
Doodle
that the
is
Pictionary clone?
yeah, basically it's Pictionary,
That's this.
but
The, oh,
and it's
sorry, Doodle.
multiplayer. Yeah, so you play
Ah,
with two other people, and someone has to draw, and two other people get to guess, and it's really well done. It's pretty. It
hmm.
looks great. I think so. That's really nice.
There we go.
Clout, Clout is a great app. So Clout is for those who use it. If you're on Twitter or Facebook, it's a free service. You just kind of log in. It's kind of, I don't want to get into whether a lot of people hate Clout, and I totally understand that because it is weird. It's a metric system for measuring how important you are,
It's
basically.
almost pointless, but not
Yeah,
quite.
and everybody seems to beat me on it. So it's not like my Clout score is like 50. So it's like, yeah, I think you guys are both higher than I am. I mean, Raphael's like as high as our site. So it's like, so I always get frustrated looking at my Clout score anyway. But this app is really nice, made by Julian Dolan. He's a French developer. He does all sorts of things. He's actually hopefully coming out with an app for LinkedIn. He said if we got 100 retweets, he would do it. And so he's got way more than 100 retweets now. But it's a beautiful app. I love it. It's a great example of Windows Phone programming when a developer can really just nail this. And so it's a free app. Highly recommend people go and get it.
Cool.
So,
Raphael, have you got any apps for us?
So I
Don't know if
was
you have
going to
information
recommend
first week.
again the Sally Salon, but it gets a little repetitive near the end. So
Near the end.
can't
You're that close far already.
yeah, so I can't. Yeah, I'm already like 3 or 4 centers in or something. I've already upgraded pretty much everything.
Okay.
But what I would recommend is actually a game because I have lots of apps, but none of them really shine for me. So I stick to games, and
Okay.
I was just on a flight, a
all
5
right.
plus. I was on a 5+ hour flight to the East Coast to hang out with family for the holidays, and the game that kept me busy the most was Puzzle Quest.
Okay.
If you haven't played this, it's pretty awesome. I hate Bejeweled. So you have these little diamonds and stuff, and ugh. But they've integrated this Bejeweled like mechanic into the combat system, and it's amazingly addictive. So I built a character. I'm going through. You have to match certain colors to get certain manas and spells, and it's immensely complicated. So I would definitely pick up Puzzle Quest. It is expensive.
Cool.
I think it's like $6 or $7, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, it's an
Cool.
Xbox Live title. I haven't tried that one, so actually maybe I'll go download after. And
So-
just
so-
to give.
So you
No,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Dan. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say to tease people. Let's see if I can get this on screen. You have two apps there. One is Add to Contacts, and then this one here is a YouTube app. Doesn't show up very well. I'll cover these on the site hopefully in the next day or two. The YouTube app is YouTube Pro, and I'm going to kind of pre-announce this already. It is the redone version of SuperTube. So the guys at SuperTube have gone through and completely overhauled their UI, changing the name. Definitely in response to MetroTube both coming and going. And so I think they're taking advantage of that. I'll give a video tour of it. It's a really nice thing if you use MetroTube and are looking for an alternative. I think this will be your app. It's actually more powerful than MetroTube since it does video uploads, it does downloads, HD, HQ, all of that kind of stuff. The new UI, it's actually really nice. The other one, Add to Contacts. So yesterday we covered an app which I thought was really awesome, was the ability to search in Bing, and if you found a restaurant or something like that, allowed you to save it to contacts, something that's currently not supported in the operating system, and I think it's a big hole. I think it's really annoying. And I showed you an app that fixed that. Now, I don't want to get into the controversy of how that happens, but I'm just going to say there was another developer working on the same idea at the same time, and someone got to it first, but someone had the idea first. Anyways, the second one is called Add to Contacts. It's made from the developer of I'm a WP7, Scott Peterson. So if you're familiar with that app, you know the programming skills are really, really high. And
yeah.
Add to Contacts is what I showed you yesterday was nice. Add to Contacts is more polished, does even a little bit more. For instance, it can actually save the image to your picture hub so you can add it to contacts for that restaurant or store or whatever. So it does a little bit more. I'll be covering that too. That's actually, you should be live in a marketplace the next day. So that should be very exciting. Great stuff coming though. A lot of developers are working on some really amazing things, and just pay attention. We'll be covering it. So
We better give a very quick shout out on the podcast because our chat room's going a little bit nuts regarding it to Armed, the little Christmas Day gift that for me that just sort of came out of nowhere. This massive 3D game developed by some indie developers, really friendly developers as well by the looks of things. We're not going to go into too much detail about it because it's a bit of an old story now. But suffice to say, if you're listening to this and you haven't yet got the trial of Armed, and you're even slightly into your strategy games or your Command and Conquers, but done really well on the phone. Armed is a thorough recommendation for me. I purchased it, and it is a really great game. So that's probably worth us mentioning. But let's quickly. We've talked about Clout. Let's just talk quickly about the other game this week. Have either of you downloaded Zombies on Phone?
I did last night.
I haven't gotten it, but I have that tied on my Xbox, and I love that game.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody seems to be really in love with it. The reviews are outstanding for this release. I played it last night. I have to admit, it's actually kind of hard. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. But it's actually a challenge. I don't know what to expect. It has 3 games in it. It has some actually issues. I'm confused. It has 3 games in it, but it seems like there's only one. I don't know how that works, where you choose the different games, time Viking, and all this. I find it a little confusing, and I think the graphics are superb, though. It really is kind of cool how well it works. It reminds me of Smash TV. If anyone played arcade games back in the 90s. It's one of those games where you're a guy that has to rotate around and shoot all sorts of stuff to try and attack you.
Cool.
I think it's neat. I bought it, so of course I buy almost everything. But no, it's definitely an interesting game. And the reviews, like I said, are high. But what do you guys have? So, Raphael, I don't think you've tried it. Jay?
I'm just downloading it as we speak. I've had a bit of a busy week. I've been developing, as you know. So I've just put it on my download, so I'll have an opinion for it next week. But I hear really positive things, so it sounds like it's one that's worth trying. Which explains for someone whose name I can't pronounce in the chat room, Gwyndion Sure. That's why I'm fondling my Nokia, because I'm downloading something. But also because it's pretty. So that brings us just to the end of my software news with one little thing to mention, and that is Ziggy. Of which, Daniel, you tell us a little bit about Ziggy. We'll try and keep it relatively brief.
So Ziggy is an interesting. Also, yeah, Ziggy's basically it's basically based on nuance, right? So it's not completely like this innovative, or I mean, it is innovative, but it's not. Someone completely invented this. So the structure was already there from nuance, and then this developer came along and set up some websites that it would filter through as kind of a whitelist, and then it brings up the best results. Now, it's not as I know some people. Rudy Hune, who makes TV show and Fuse and everything, great developer. He was just saying, "Oh, it's just playing up ass.com," and it's actually more than that. As we found out, it actually does filter through results and gives you sort of the best one. So it's a mix of both, like really creative and also not creative. And a lot of people criticize the UI a bit, which I think it's true, but it's sort of
pretty
secondary.
justified. It's kind of
yeah, but it's for me it's secondary. That can definitely be addressed later. But so this is Ziggy's sort of like a Siri. It's not nearly as powerful as Siri. I mean, you can't tell it to make appointments, and also I'm not saying that, but it's definitely better than just standard Bing too. in that and tell.
I'm curious actually. When we talk about Ziggy, so obviously, as you said, we know it can do a couple of basic commands and that sort of thing. And as you were quite rightly saying, Rudy picked up on it and said, "Oh, I reckon I can do this in about an hour." What I'm curious to know, has he sent you his XAP?
Yes, yeah, I've been playing with Rudy's versions. He's sent me 2 versions so far. He has a problem with
he hasn't sent it to me.
He doesn't love you as much as he loves me.
He's told me twice he's going to do it, and obviously he just loves the American accent more.
The problem is Nuance's servers requires the app to be authenticated, and so technically right now the voice part doesn't work. I think he's waiting for that to get approved. So it worked for like a day or two. Then you can only have like 3 apps doing it. So he's got to wait for that before he can go further with it. He's actually made a pretty nice version. It's very Metro. It looks like your SMS text chat with the bubbles going back and forth, and his also kind of pulls down photos, which is kind of cool. So if you talk about like New York, state, like I want to know what's the capital of New York, it'll actually bring down the an image of New York State with the capital and stuff. So it does a little bit more stuff. It's still he needs a little bit refinements on the whitelist where it's actually going through and pulling down that information. So it's like I said, it's not as easy as what the developer of Ziggy did. He actually did some really cool stuff with giving you the right answers. And he's going to do more with it. I think this is great though with two developers going head to head, sort of, because it sucks for the developer, right? Because it's like, oh, I have it, getting the market, and then someone else comes along and goes, I'll do it better. But
Yeah.
that's how this stuff works, and I
That's
think
how competition works.
yeah, I mean, what ends up happening is who wins? The consumer wins, right? So we'll get a better app for it. So, but yeah, it's a neat program. I actually do use this frequently. I think it's great for if you're out and you need to get the tip. What's 20% of an $80 bill? Well, that's easy to do, but you know what I'm saying. It'll quickly calculate it for you. So I find it useful for getting factual information, this kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a free app, so.
Okay, so have you used Ziggy much, Raphael?
I have not. I'm not usually a fan of these type of applications because they always require you to tailor your natural speech into robotic commands. Siri, however, is probably the top of is cream of the crop there in terms of processing natural language. But all these require you to speak in some sort of robot language, and I'd prefer to just I'll use either Bing's voice search to look up some keywords, or I'll just type it in manually.
I always find it quite funny that we're talking about the new interface, and they're like, "Oh yeah, now you'll be able to talk to your phone." And I'm thinking, well, I've been talking to phones pretty much since phones in my life. But
Right.
let's put that aside. So that's software news. We're going to move on now into hardware news. But actually, we've already talked about most of the hardware that was in my script, which is pretty good because we're running a bit long. So we've talked the Nokia Lumia, we've talked about the HTC Radiant. We didn't mention the LG Fantasy, which, to my knowledge, we've only seen. It kind of is a wisp and a fantasy at the moment. It doesn't quite exist. It might be at CES. It might not be.
A wisp and a fancy.
Yeah, a wisp and a fantasy. it's like a ghost phone.
Raphael and I are impressed with the Britishisms. Yeah, the fantasies are just also rumored for a CDMA, supposedly Sprint. It's hard to get excited about this phone, except for one aspect. It's rumored to have an IPS display, which we haven't seen yet on a Windows Phone. IPS displays are really nice. That's what the iPad 2 uses and Apple uses. Some laptops are using it now as well. It has a very high degree of visibility. If you tip it to the sides, you can see it very well. It's very clear and sharp. I think that's interesting. Other than that, it's not exactly a thrilling phone, but LG I don't think is necessarily going for that top tier, which is what we get excited over, right? But that mid-range level phone is still very important and important market share. So I think there's room for this out there, but we'll have to see. LG's been pretty timid with their Mango releases, to say the least. And the Jill Sanders phone is hardly a,
That doesn't count. It doesn't count as a second-gen device. And actually, this one doesn't really look, with the exception of a front-facing camera, if the specs that we have are true, which we don't know, there's a 1 gigahertz, it's second-generation CPU, but it's only the 1 gig, 8 gig of internal storage, and the front-facing camera. The IPS display, as you say, is the key point that will be interesting if we do see it. But there's not an awful lot to say about it, I don't think.
Right. So everybody's still wondering, Sprint, Verizon, what are they getting? We'll just address that quickly. Still no idea. We've heard the rumor this week that Verizon, is passed on the 900. I don't want to put too much stock into that stuff. I'm not saying it's not true. I just don't want to get the mechanics of it wrong. The mechanics of it was sold that Verizon saw it and was like, bah, and, we'll pass. It's hard to say exactly what happened. AT&T could have fought for an exclusive for this and locked out Verizon for all we know. AT&T does do that, and a lot of carriers do that, actually. I'm curious about how this model works, by the way, because I don't know. I'm going to try to find out for you guys, but my understanding is, HTC probably goes to these carriers and, here's this device, it'll cost you this much. Or you can have an exclusive of it, and it'll cost you that much. And I think it's sold as that. I'm not really positive. And I think sometimes AT&T does give it to us as an exclusive. I think the Focus S is an example of that. And so we're not sure why Verizon may or may not have passed on this. We'll find out more at CES. For all we know, maybe they are going to get it, but perhaps later after a 3-month exclusive with AT&T. Not too sure. Sprint, definitely super quiet. I know there was this rumor that Sprint is going to be getting 3 phones for Windows. Listen, it could be totally true, but that source was really unverified. There was no real solid info on that, and we still haven't even heard of an inkling of any devices testing with them. So I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying don't put a lot of stock into this notion that Sprint has 3 phones on the way. They could, but They could not. So no solid leads on any of that stuff. So sorry, folks. And as a Sprint customer, it pains me to say that. But all right,
So
talking
maybe,
points.
but we'll see. We'll see. We'll as soon as we get that news, we'll break it. But I know it's very important to you guys out there. I just nod. That's
Yeah.
hey, so let's move on then to talking points. We've got 3 to chat about this week, one of which will be quite quick, but the other ones are just we're going to talk about. We put to bed today, or we hope we put to bed today, a bit of a rumor that's been circling around the blogosphere, whatever word you want to use for it, of Microsoft buying out Nokia's smartphone division and leaving Nokia with just the dumb phone or feature phone / Symbian aspect of their world left, which seems absolutely ridiculous. And I really don't believe Microsoft should buy Nokia. I completely agree with what we put on the site with regards to the fact that Microsoft have invested all this time with having OEMs, with focusing on this update structure. Google can do what they like. Google can buy Motorola all they like, but it doesn't make any sense from my perspective for Microsoft to actually buy out Nokia when they've invested in this partnership and this idea of progressing the phone together as a slightly enhanced OEM. I'm curious to know, Raphael, what you think of this, because obviously you've had chats with Microsoft, etc.
You know, this is as silly as the rumors that Microsoft is going to buy HP. Microsoft doesn't want to get into hardware, right? Otherwise, they would have gotten into hardware a long time ago, building their own PCs. They're a software company by heart. They're not going to, I mean, they've done some little one-off hardware things, like maybe the router they did.
Keyboards and mice, that kind of thing.
Yeah, keyboards and mice. But it's really about enhancing the experience, the Windows experience on PCs out there. So, yeah,
absolutely right.
I don't see that happening. And plus, Nokia, this is probably not fair to Microsoft, but Nokia is very fast-moving, and Microsoft's just slow. So this is not a compatible. It's not a compatible mixture.
So what we're saying is that if a matchmaker was doing this, they would say no.
Yes, if they went to that hot or not site or whatever. This is not a
site. Microsoft and Nokia 5% match. No.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm not putting too much faith in this. I mean, once again, I said the same about, of course, them partnering up with Nokia. I was like, no way, but clearly I was wrong on that. Honestly, I find it really, really hard in the tech world to predict anything. And I just don't. That's why I try not to make proclamations too much about companies merging or buying out or this kind of stuff. We are not privy to that. We don't understand the charts and the reasoning behind this. For all we know, they have this huge plan. It could go either way for me. It doesn't. I agree with Raphael. Off the cuff, it doesn't make sense to me for them to do this. Yep. It sends the wrong message, especially to the OEM partners.
I say not to mention that putting aside Microsoft, and obviously Nokia just outsourced Symbian development to Accenture, or whoever it is. I've forgotten the name. It just wouldn't make sense.
I mean, if you look at the second-gen devices, like by HTC and Samsung, really solid. We've, gushed a lot about the Titan, the Radar, the Focus S. If those devices weren't good and just getting terrible reviews, I would see more incentive for Microsoft to possibly do this. Like, screw it, we'll do it ourselves, right? But HTC and Samsung are holding their own with these devices. Even if you want to argue the Focus S is just a rehash of the Galaxy S2, it's still a nice phone, And and I think Windows Phone users deserve that. So I don't.
We deserve it now.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I don't see the motivation here. Like, it's going to send the wrong message to their partners. It's a whole other, business for them to get into. Why would they want to do that? Like, it's a why buy the cow and get in milk for free kind of thing, right?
And let's also not remind ourselves that it didn't make sense for Google to buy Motorola, with the exception of the fact that it was a patent issue. They need the patents to protect themselves.
Yeah, and someone threw that around too, that this is a patent issue, and that is what I'm saying. Like, maybe that's
Microsoft
why
they need software patents that the manufacturers can take care of their own patents where needed. Microsoft are relatively set when it comes to the patent portfolio.
Right, but if they bought Nokia,
doesn't
sorry, then Microsoft gets those patents. It extends to all of Windows Phone. Right now, it'll cover Nokia phones, but not all the Windows Phone ecosystem. So it's the same reason why Google bought Motorola, is that it goes from, instead of just Motorola being covered, to the entire operating system being covered. This is what I'm saying, where these are these little things that, to us, may or may not be selling points. I find it hard to speculate on this stuff. I don't want to get into it too much. I don't put a lot of faith. I find it weird that Merchant could just send out a single tweet and the world goes bizarre, crazy over it.
He's borderline crazy, that man, I swear.
Yeah,
And
I think it's important to note this guy also, I think he was under legal action or whatever from Microsoft. I mean, not Microsoft, from Nokia.
Right.
I didn't look into the exact.
Well, he hasn't been a fan of the whole Nokia Windows thing, and he's been really kind of slamming both companies. So there is a little bit of this is almost FUD, right? I mean, he's spreading bad information, saying buy Nokia. It sends the wrong message, perhaps, and so I hate these kind of situations.
Right ahead of CES as well.
Yeah, exactly. So
let's put that one to bed. And we'll ask another question. Will we ever see a Sony Ericsson Windows phone? Because that's been our other big rumor this week.
It was started by me.
Yeah, and it was started by you. I'm of the opinion that we won't. And honestly, because I don't see why would Sony go for it when they're investing quite heavily in Android and the whole Arc and PlayStation phone rubbish. Why would they
see that as the argument, to be honest? So let me address this quickly. So I kind of started this thing, but I think there was some hints for it. A couple
so
reasons.
For anyone wondering, Dan is like the schoolgirl in the playground starting a little rumor.
I gave fair warning that this was total, it's total speculation. So don't take it with as gospel.
So this week says total rubbish. Yeah.
No, I think there was a lot of clues on an image that said something Metro E was going on. I don't find the argument why Sony
tiles, man. You were looking for tiles.
I'm just saying there was a lot of hidden. They wanted you to look at that image and look at clues. That's what I took from it. And so,
well, see, I want to believe that you walk around life looking at everywhere that you see a tile and thinking, "Oh, it's Windows Phone did."
No, I think come on. There was
you zoomed in to the point where he saw squares.
Yeah. But no, this notion. So Sony Ericsson used to make Windows mobile phones. They were actually announced as a Windows Phone partner when the Windows Phone was first announced back in 2010, early on, and they even made a device with a slide-out keyboard as an Xperia type device, and then they backed out at the last minute. So there's obviously precedence here. This notion that they've embraced Android and they have PlayStation, those are two separate things. Let's address them. Android, yeah, they've done Android. It's also not worked out for them. If you look at their stock, you look at their market share. Android is not working for their mobile division. That is totally clear. And so you have to ask yourself, when you're a mobile division, I know, okay, they're part of Sony, but they operate as a separate company. This is how a lot of the Japanese, Korean companies do. They have these separate divisions. They operate independently. The mobile section is about making money. If it's doing Android but not winning, it's losing money. It's got to do something else. And so they have said that they leave the door open for Windows Phone in the past. Now, Sony and Ericsson are, of course, separating. And so now you just have Sony. And now people are like, but why would they? They had the PlayStation thing. Okay, well, the PlayStation phone also is not selling. Okay, the PlayStation phone is up there with Android's 3D nonsense. It was a big thing for about 3 months and then just disappeared. Okay, and the PlayStation phone is dead. It's not catching on. Mm-hmm. And they've also mentioned the PlayStation Suite was platform agnostic. They were considering develop it for the iPhone, and they specifically said Windows Phone. So I don't find any of this stuff particularly compelling as to a reason why they wouldn't do this. Having said that, I agree. I don't think we'll see an announcement of this at CES. So, but I don't rule it out for the future either.
Yeah, quite. I think that's a pretty fair analysis of it. And because we're running a little bit long on time, we'll move on to the next point. I want to have a quick chat about Meadow deployment. Meadow development. So I'm a big fan of what Chris Fields has done here. He's done a lot of work there, but he seems to be going through a sort of stage of on again, off again with his development, which I understand. When you get a popular app out there and sort of everyone suddenly wants to have a bit of a piece of it, there's quite a bit of pressure on you suddenly to make everything perfect, and it gets to you. So I wanted to quickly defend him to a point, because I know people are a bit upset about the fact that at one point he was going to make it free and people were saying, oh, if I paid for it, it's a slap in the face. And so then he decided he was going to make it free, so keep it paid, but just try and donate the money some way. And then he said he was going to discontinue development. I've had a couple of chats with him. I think he's actually going to carry on quietly and just sort of let it run. But it is difficult for a developer trying to support something on his own. If, of course, he doesn't continue with Meadow, there are about 10 or 15 developers, of which I am one, who are willing to jump on the source code and make our own little versions of it and keep it going, because we don't want to see a really good Twitter client die. But it is interesting. I don't think Windows Phone Central will be covering it particularly from this point now, because we can't keep going back and forth between, oh, it's alive, oh, it's dead, oh, it's alive, oh, it's dead. You know what? It's a Twitter client. As great as a Twitter client it is, there are a million other ways of doing it. But I did want to defend him a little bit, because it can be quite stressful when suddenly everyone criticizes everything about your work, and it does happen. So there we go. That was just a quick chat. Does anyone have anything to put in on that from you guys?
Yeah, so actually, I have a bit of a unique perspective here, because I speak to Long Zhang a lot, and him and his team of developers work on MetroTwit, which is the Twitter client for Windows.
Yes.
And judging from my interactions with them, and I actually contributed some minor code to do shadows, but Twitter development is a nightmare. I don't think people realize that Twitter is completely unstable. Their APIs suck. And maintaining a client is way more difficult than any other type of application, in my opinion. So to see these things drop off,
I think you're completely right there as well.
Yeah. Yes. So to see these things drop like flies is not surprising to me. I mean, just the other day, Twitter, all of a sudden, their streaming API broke. MetroTwit started whinging, as Chris would say, and it's very painful to support Twitter development. I totally feel for him.
Yeah,
and best of luck to him.
As he pointed out, this Twitter issue that I reported on a couple of weeks back, and when Twitter starts suddenly gzip encoding their responses, which breaks, which I mean,
just randomly.
We're using TweetSharp, which is a pretty popular implement Twitter interaction, because it takes most of the work away from me having to play with Twitter APIs and sort of just let it get on with it. But one little thing like that breaks all these different APIs, breaks all the different implementations of it, and you just think, Twitter, if you're going to change these things, there has to be an announcement sent out to your developers' mailing list.
Yep. Well, and of course, this gets into the idea that Twitter is eventually closing out competition and making it purposely hard for third-party developers so that they can corner the market, which wouldn't be that bad if the Twitter client for Windows Phone was awesome. But obviously, it's far from it, and hence why we have this, third-party development out there and a lot of motivation to do so. Now, my issue with Meadow, I love Meadow. Obviously, we were the first site to break Meadow. We covered it even before it was released. We've been championing it ever since. That's why this story is sort of personal, because I still have it. It's still loaded on my phone. I have 1.9. Yeah. I do use it regularly. It's still one of my favorite Twitter clients. My issue with this was not necessarily that he was discontinuing it or wanted to get away from it. I totally understand it. All the points Raphael makes are totally valid. My issue was that it was just handled poorly. And so I don't have any problems with any developers going, listen, I want to wipe my hands of this. It's too much. I have too much going on in my life. It's totally fine. That is your prerogative. But I think developers, if you start charging for applications and it becomes very popular, you have a responsibility to your customers to make sure of a smooth transition. I think he should have given the code away to another developer. He could have sold the code to another developer. He could have code-plexed it. He could have done any of that behind the scenes, had this set up saying, listen, I need to get out of this for whatever reason, but I'm making sure another developer's taking over and he's going to continue with it. Everybody would have been fine with that. As long as you tell people why you're doing something and just being honest with them, they don't care. They honestly don't. Microsoft is learning this very easily and quickly right now, that if you're going to delay an update, just tell us and we'll be fine with it. And so that was my issue. It's not that he's getting away from the development or discontinuing it. It was just how it was handled. And that's why we're kind of highlighting it. I want to make it a case of how not to do things. Now, in fairness to Chris, he's new at this, and everybody has experience, and he even apologized. He said, yeah, I should have handled that better. And so, but I want it to be as a learning experience for other developers, because I don't want this to become a habit and people just be like, oh, done, and closing shop and leaving, especially over something very popular. So hopefully Meadow will live on, but we'll see what happens, I suppose, with it.
Yeah, and thanks for the little hint there. If an app gets popular, I've got to keep supporting it.
Right.
Yeah, we're learning that with Chevron as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
Same thing.
But But we are supporting our relative software. Obviously, version 2 is just around the corner, hopefully. But we are hugely over time. So I'm going to move on to community. Our New Year's resolution's already been broken, just like many great New Year's resolutions before it. So I'm going to move on to comments from last time, which was, of course, episode 133. We've only got 2, which is good. We've got one from Scott D34. He says he was listening to the podcast and he had a few comments about the discussion of Verizon wanting to push people towards LTE as a money grab. Do you remember we were talking, Daniel, about how we thought that part of the reason for them wanting LTE was just to up the data prices? He was saying that Verizon, unlike Sprint, doesn't charge for extra 4G service, and there are 4G specific plans, but they're in the same price area. So the idea is that the provisioning features are set up so that the devices can access whichever network is required. He's saying that Verizon actually want to move it over basically because it's a more efficient voice platform, and that primarily because 3G networks are overloaded, and that they were launched 8 years ago. Now we've got too many data cards, too many people using phones and modems, and these 3G networks are overloaded. So that's what the carriers are pushing, which is a fairly interesting perspective, because I hadn't personally hadn't considered it that way, as actually Verizon's worried about their capacity and capability to support the network, and that's why they're pushing manufacturers. In which case I think it's probably if that is the way that they're going, it's actually good for the consumer. It's good for everybody. So we should take what you said.
It's a fair point. The only criticism right now is that the changeover from voice to data with LTE was never solidified. And just like how LTE is itself not an agreed upon standard, not nearly as agreed upon as, say, GSM, there's just too many variations of LTE, which is really going to be detrimental for customers, because the selling point of GSM is you can throw in a SIM card, hop on another network. You'll still be able to do that. You just won't be able to get LTE service, because LTE is going to be on different frequencies on different phones. It's going to be another way now for these carriers to lock in their customers. Now, I understand the motivations for this is not necessarily to lock in people, but partly due to efficiency and technologies. But this is where we're getting into the stop putting your phone up to the screen.
I'm testing macro focus.
But there is a problem with that. But the handshake switching between data and voice and LTE, like I said, is not agreed upon. There's actually 5 or 6 different technologies that do that. They don't all work very well, and so there is this lag behind it. Hopefully that will happen, but right now it's not something that actually works. But I agree, there is this argument. Verizon is the same thing with Fios. It's their fiber optic system for cable internet at home is so huge that they don't know what to do with the bandwidth, as opposed to cable modems, which are completely overwhelmed. So it's a fair point.
And then we have one more comment from Chili Satan, which says, just wondering if we know of any video streaming services coming to Windows Phone. As he points out, TV catch-up doesn't work. There's no 4OD or iPlayer app in the UK, and Netflix is the only one in the US that he knows of. I'm actually going to echo this. It would be nice to see iPlayer and 4OD, which are sort of the big streaming standards or catch-up standards over here, come to Windows Phone. And I think the fact that they've now gone on to Xbox Live over here is probably a good sign that it will happen, hopefully relatively soon. What's the state of video streaming over there for Raphael or Daniel, whoever wants to pick it up?
I would even I'd make this more generic and say there's like no real way to get streaming video media to the phone, and it's very frustrating. I was speaking to someone about Stefan on Twitter. He works at CCP Games. They do EVE Online and stuff. But he's like, there's no real way to get like Justin TV and all those other streaming services to the phone. I agree, it's extremely frustrating. That's why I don't do video on my phone. There is YouTube, but that doesn't really count.
It's not the easiest way of doing it. Let's put it that way.
No, and it's terrible. Well. But unless I miss something, there's not much else. So
you can just about open MPEG-4 videos through the API with a relative amount of streaming, but it's not perfect.
Yeah,
and we know SuperTube does their own hacky encoding technique, which is interesting, but also technically not supported.
Yeah, I bring that up. I bring that up because I think that's something we have to fix before we can even get to live TV.
Quite agreed.
Yeah, and Hulu. Again, I think we're still waiting on a Hulu Plus client, which is sorely needed.
Yeah. But again, based on Xbox Live, how things are changing for the video over there, I would expect to see something this year from a lot of these services. So we'll live in hope on that one. So we have questions from the chat room now, and the number one and first question is, "Where's Skype?"
I was just going to ask that.
So interesting. I've actually got a little bit of something to shed on this today. I was followed by a Skype recruiter on Twitter who is recruiting just for mobile app development in the iOS and Windows Phone region. He was kind of directing me towards a Windows Phone for Skype development position, which part of me would like to take, but the other part of me doesn't want to live in Sweden, so we'll see how that goes. But by the looks of things, based on what I was looking at there, we're looking for somebody who was an expert in audio and video, or had experience with audio and video development, which I would not describe myself as being one of those at all. So I would say that it's possibly they're close to having a version working or something which is pretty close, but they need to improve it. They're not happy with the performance of video calling. Remember that we only really saw previews of the messaging system in Skype. We never really saw it working over the sockets. So I have a feeling that we might need to hold tight a little bit longer. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I would say we might be 2 months away yet.
Yeah, but we've seen that job request months ago too. We did a story, I think it was probably back in July, with them looking for video too. It was back when this notion of front-facing cameras on second-gen Win phones were still up in the air and wasn't verified, and we're using it as saying evidence that no, it's probably going to be on board, because they were looking for people who help with video encoding and stuff. So they've always been looking for people to help with video and doing these kind of jobs and positions. I don't necessarily want to read too much into it, because they're always going to be needing people to help improve it, expand it, and go further with it. I still think, yeah, it's an app, but they want to integrate it with the OS. A lot of people pointed out that the real holdup has been actually since they've bought Skype. There's been some legal issues. Raphael, I think you've gone off on Skype a lot, saying how awful, and we all know how awful their client really is, especially on Windows, and that the Microsoft team probably got the code for Skype once they bought the company, or looked at it and were horrified, and are now just sort of, trying to fix it. If you want to mention,
the voice codec is still excellent, so give them some credit.
Yeah, but I think they've made that open and available to everyone now. I'm not sure, but I think somewhere on Skype's site you can actually get it, and it's free, or I don't know what the legal stuff behind it is. But yeah, that client, at least on the desktop PC, is terrible in every way, from a UI perspective, from a technical perspective, and part of the problem is probably that it's written in Delphi, a very, dead language. There are some people out there that claim that it's still alive and it's being improved, even with XAML stuff. Yeah, right.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So it's a bit of an unfortunate one. But then again, I need to retract my previous statement. Cyrus in the chat room has just sent me a picture of Swedish girls, and now maybe I'm going to move over there and work on Skype's mobile app.
I've been to Sweden. I spent 2 weeks there when I was 12 or 13. I liked it a lot. I would take an opportunity to move to Sweden. Sweden, if you need a blogger or a sleep technone, call me.
So you offering the entire of Sweden?
Yes, I loved Sweden, man. Scandinavia was awesome. I was really excited. I would move to there in a heartbeat. Screw where I live. I hate it here.
Daniel's just offered himself to the entire of Sweden for blogging services. Yes. I like that.
Yes.
Okay, next question from Alexander Rojas. What's the best Twitter app? Very, very objective.
That's a loaded question there.
It's a very loaded question. I'm actually going to avoid answering it, because I don't think there is a best Twitter app. I think they all have their merits and benefits.
Yeah, people know whatever app I cover. My big one this week, of course, was Tweetit. Huge fan of Tweetit. I think I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's not Metro. Okay. Don't get me wrong, I love Metro. Metro isn't for everything, or rather, you don't always have to do it always in Metro. If you can think outside the box and do it well, I'm okay with that. Tweetit, for me, does that. It's not perfect. It still lacks some basic features, such as autofill and stuff, but the developer, I'm telling you, is gung-ho. If you saw where he went from 1.0 to 2.0, he's pretty serious about this. He's already taken the idea of Meadow, how you can scroll, you can pan right and pull down the entire website of the link that is there, and simply with an image. It's one of the best parts of Meadow. He took notice of that, and I think he's going to be integrating it. So Tweetit's one of my favorite apps. If not for you now, at least watch it. We'll be covering it. I still really like Meadow. Carbon is right around the corner. Carbon is really good. I'm very happy about it. It looks like it got rejected from the marketplace due to the fact that it was submitted like a week ago and still hasn't come up. But look for Carbon. I think it's going to be big. Rowie. I liked Rowie a lot,
Rowie?
but Rowie, whatever. But I'm sorry, guys. I'm waiting on that Mango release. You can't make me wait 6 months for a Mango release. I'm sorry. That's just
You can't make me wait.
I will send you a zap.
Oh, the beta.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You should be on the beta, right?
I had the alpha for it, and then they stopped sending me the betas, and I just don't have time to go begging devs for zaps. So
I think
we
what's
want to see.
really quick, I think it's interesting or important to note that Rowie will eventually sync with MetroTwit on the desktop. So there's that value add there.
Nest. Yeah, the Nest concept. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
but
really big.
I think it's important. Sorry, I don't. I think it's important that users go out and just download all of them and try them all.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, there's no sense in going with what's popular, what's not, because they all differ.
It's totally true. One thing we notice with Twitter clients, people have very specific needs. They're like, I need my list to do this. I need a live tile with my list. I get push notification. So you just gotta have to try them all. It's and there you go. End of story.
Interesting question then from VIP Ambassador. What's the best photo editor app? Do we know many photo editing apps? I only know of 2 that used to come on my Samsung. Other than that, I don't use them.
So I'll come out and say, if you want to do photo editing, doing it on the phone is absolutely ridiculous. Sorry, but that's just dumb. Offload the pictures to the PC and work on them there.
I disagree a little bit. I think for basic.
Damn you.
No, I get the point. I do photography. If anyone wants to see my Flickr site, I'll put it up later. I'm a big fan of photography, but I understand on the phone. Sometimes I just want to crop an image. Maybe I want to switch to black and white. Just do some basic photo editing. In that regard, for me, it's Thumba. I really like it. There is a new one on the marketplace which is looking really promising. It's actually free right now. I'm going to throw a name out there if I can find it. It's not nearly as robust. Let's see. Oh, it's called Pictomphone. Pictoma phone. It's a free app out there. It's kind of neat. It lacks a lot of filters, but it's a nice start. But for me, it's Thumba. That's really, I think, the best one out there.
There we go. Thumba is the recommendation. They're the one that I'm just going to quickly pick up on because as much as I'd love to carry on talking to our community for the next couple of hours, we really haven't got the time. But the other thing that we've once again been asked about dual core, and I'm just going to put this one to bed. We won't see a dual core phone, in my opinion, for Windows Phone platform until at least the next major iteration of the app of the platform of Windows Phone, because there's no need for it right now. Nothing in Windows Phone, as far as I know, is optimized or will they be able to use dual core in a particularly effective way. I think that we won't see it until Windows Phone 8, and that's my prediction. No one disagrees with me.
Isn't that in a few months?
Yeah, I know. That's right. I mean, I think by summertime we're going to be seeing Windows Phone 8
You think
devices.
Windows Phone 8 is that close?
Yes.
Well, I don't know. I'm just guessing.
I think we've got Tango
I'm not saying,
at summertime.
I'm not saying it's going to be released. I'm saying you're going to start seeing things about it over the summertime.
Okay.
We won't see a release, I don't think, till late 2012. I think that's the plan. We're going to hear a lot more of it, I'm saying, by summertime. Yeah, the dual core thing, it's tough, right? I think I could totally see, though, HTC or Samsung going, let's do dual core anyway, because people keep asking about it. It's kind of like a selling point, right? Kind of like the Titan. The Titan doesn't need a 1.5 gigahertz CPU. They could have done a 1.4, say, to low battery life, but they went 1.5. Okay. Does it make a difference? No.
Well, it goes with the whole theme of that phone. It's the massive daddy of Windows phones at the moment.
Yeah, sure. But the thing with, it's true. The OS needs to support this. I think there's arguments that Windows Phone could use it for other tasks. I think loading tabs in Internet Explorer, for instance, multiple processes in the background, downloading video, LTE support definitely needs it, because now the choking point on the phone becomes the CPU, not the data, because you got to inhale all that data and process it, so you're going to need dual cores. So I think there are some arguments that dual core is on the cusp of being needed, not necessarily as a core function of the device, but to augment other services. So I totally see the function, but we do need the OS to support it, so that's needed. Maybe in Tango, but we'll get more info soon.
The only point which people are saying, and Gibby's saying, is that we can't record video in 1080p. It's not technically true that we need dual core for 1080p video. We could record dual core for 1080p video with higher clock speeds. We just need more processing power. But dual core is potentially the most elegant way of doing it. Yes, there are benefits. We're not denying that, but you need to have a system that can, take advantage of those benefits. So I thought I'd just address that. Anyone want to pick up any other questions, or shall we wrap this one up?
Yeah, I want to go eat dinner.
I want to go to bed. I don't know what's happening over in Raphael's world. What are you going to do next, man?
Get back to work.
Get back to work. There we go. So we've all got important things to do. Daniel, do you want to wrap it up?
Oh, sure. You can find us all on Twitter at WP Central. You can find myself at Malatesta77. You can find George at CopperTop004, Rich Edmonds at Rich Edmonds, Jay at JT Bennett. You can find Paul at SegaCon, Raphael at Within Raphael, and of course you check out his website as well for his Windows information. And you can follow Matt, one of our other new developer writers, at Rogue Code. He's got a couple new apps coming out, by the way, some cool ones that I'm kind of excited about. We'll be covering those shortly. Very impressive, the stuff he does. That guy knows design. You can also, this has been a Mobile Nations podcast. You can go to mobilenations.com for more great shows covering everything mobile. I think we're up to like 12 podcasts now, some really great stuff, including Girls Gone Gadgets, which is a lot of fun. Thanks to the WP Central Store for sponsoring the podcast. Thanks also to these great artists for the music that donate for the show. All that kind of jazz. We'll be at CES next week. I'll be flying out there Sunday, so make sure you tune in for our coverage of that. We'll be having meetings with everybody and covering the Nokia event. That'll be Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard, 3 p.m. Pacific. Make sure, though, you tune in. It's going to be an exciting day. So there you go. Thanks, Raphael, for joining us. Thank you, Jay, for help moderating that. And thanks, Renee, for the video podcast, doing our back-end stuff. Take care, everybody.